Hello, welcome to RC Video Reviews. In this video, we're going to talk about 3 calibrations you should perform on your OpenTx radio as soon as you get it. Before I get into the content, if you'd like to support my work, please consider joining me on Patreon. If you're not a subscriber, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I also have affiliate links and a t-shirt store in the description if you want to check those out as well. All right, let's get started. In OpenTx radios, there's options in the system setup to calibrate your battery, and we'll get into that on the radio in just a moment. But before we do, I wanted to give you a little help on figuring out what you should set those values to. There's so much bad information about batteries out on the internet, it's just painful to sort through it. One of the few websites out there that I've learned to trust over the years is this one, batteryuniversity.com. I'll put a link to this webpage in the description so you can look at what I'm looking at. When it comes time to set the parameters for a battery that you're going to use, one of the best options I found is to find these battery discharge graphs. As you can see on this graph, there are 4 different lines, and all 4 represent different discharge rates. The blue line is a 0.2C rate, the red line is a 0.5, green is 1C, and purple is 2C. And what that means is you read this from left to right. The lines on the left are a lower discharge rate, and the lines on the right are a higher discharge rate. The ideal scenario would be to take a current measurement so you know exactly what the current draw on your radio is. But since I don't have that information, I'm just going to use an estimate and call it 0.5C. And you can do whatever you want. If you think it's higher or lower, that's great. So I'm just going to estimate that I'm at 0.5C, which is still 1.7 amps of discharge current on a 3400 milliamp hour Li-on. When I look at that curve, what I see from full peak at 4.2 volts, I have a discharge curve that drops off right here. You can see this very sharp downward curve. That happens right at 3 volts. Once you hit 3 volts, you can see the voltage drops off a cliff. So for me, I always, on my Li-on batteries, land somewhere around 3.2 volts. And that to me is the cutoff. So I look at this chart, I say, I want to be right about there. To me, that's the cutoff spot that I use, and that's why I use 3.2 volts. If you look at this 2C discharge rate, you can see that it doesn't really fall off a cliff. It's got a pretty straight line, so you can decide what works for you. But I'd say if you're looking at a 0.2, 0.5, or 1C, you want to look right in this range for your voltage cutoff. And since I'm estimating I'm somewhere around 0.5C on my radio, I'm going to use 3.2 as my voltage cutoff. So remember that 3.2, that's important. We'll get to that later. Ideally, if you can find the spec sheet for your specific 18650 battery, you can get this information right from the manufacturer. And on these Samsung 35E 18650 batteries, they list their voltage cutoff at 2.65, which again, to me, I get a little nervous getting that low because I'm not trying to push the battery till its absolute limit. I'd rather have my plane back safely. So I'm just going to stick with 3.2. That works for me and I feel comfortable with that. Now that we have that information, we can move over to the radio and conduct the 3 important calibrations you should do on every OpenTx radio when you first get it. To do the first calibration, press the System tab and press page left twice until you get to the calibration screen, and then scroll left until you see battery calibration. On this battery calibration line, you can see that my radio currently reads 7.99 on the battery, so I'm just going to check that with a voltmeter. And I'll just plug my pins in on that XJ30 to see what the battery voltage reads on my voltmeter. And you can see on my radio, it reads 7.99 to 98, and on my voltmeter, it's reading 7.96. So that's off just a little bit. To change that, click on the jog dial and scroll down to the value read on your voltmeter, and then just take another measurement. Okay, 7.96 on the radio and 7.96 on my voltmeter. There we go. The battery reading on the radio is now calibrated to the voltmeter. The next thing we'll do, since we're on the hardware screen, is a hardware calibration. And this is actually easy to mess up. I've done it recently. And the main thing that I've done is I forgot to calibrate the 6-position switch. Let's walk through this real quick. If you press the calibration button, you can see the instructions say press enter to start, and we'll go ahead and press enter. And then now the instructions say center the sticks, pots, and sliders, and press enter. So you want to put your sticks in the middle, and all of your pots, your S1 and S2, those need to be in the middle. and then your sliders need to both be in the middle on their detents, and that's it. Everything centered up in terms of sticks, pots, and sliders. And once you've done that, press enter. Now here's the part that can get you in trouble. The instructions now say to move the sticks, pots, and sliders and press enter. So the tendency is to say, okay, up, down, left, right, but you don't want to hammer this. Just all you want to do is move the stick just to the stop, and that's it. So let's move it left to the stop, just to the stop, and that's it, and then quit. And then right to the stop, and then down and up. And then it doesn't matter after you've done that once where you leave the stick. Center or not center is fine. So repeat that for both sticks. Just go to the stop. Don't hammer it. That's the key thing. Don't hammer it up there. Down to the bottom, and then the pots and sliders. And you can do more than one at a time if you want. That's fine. The radio can multitask on this endeavor. Okay, sliders up and down. Same thing. Don't slam them. Just go to the stop and then quit. Just gentle touch. Now here's the one that I've neglected in the past. In fact, I put a video out where I hadn't calibrated this thing. So you want to calibrate your 6-position switch as well, just by putting it in each flight mode. So you can see I'm just moving through the 6-position switch, and that calibrates it as well. And then once you're done with that, it says press enter. Now we need to verify. Here's the important step. This is the one you don't want to neglect. And what we're looking for is the values on all of these sticks. So I'll move the elevator first, and we're looking for 0.3. We want to see this go to -100 and then stop. When I'm at the bottom, it should stop at -100. When I'm at the top, it should stop at 100, not 101, not 98. It should always be 100 and -100. If you move your stick to a stop and you don't see the 100 to -100 range, you need to recalibrate. The aileron is 0.4, so if I move the aileron to the right, just to the stop, you can see I hit 100. And if I go to the left, I see -100, and I'm at my stop, which is great. That's just what I want. The throttle is 0.2, and when the stick is all the way down, I see -100. And when I move the stick all the way to the top, I see +100. And then the rudder is 0.1, and when I move the stick all the way to the left, I see -100, and all the way to the right, I see 100. That means I did the sticks correctly. Now let's check the sliders and pots. The right slider is number 11, and you can see it's at -100 right now, and as I move that up through the range and get to the top of my movement, it's at 100, so that looks good to me. With my left slider all the way down, I'm at -100, and as I move to the top of the range, I'm at 100. And for the pots, S1 is 0.5, -100 to 100, and S2 is on 0.7, -100 to +100. Okay, so that tells me that my pots, sliders, and sticks are all calibrated. The last thing to check is the 6-position switch. I've got mine on position 1 right now. I'm just going to move all the way to position 6. So at 1, I'm at -100, and then -60, -20, and then notice this, it jumps to 19, and then 59 and 99. I've done some off-camera work recalibrating this thing about 5 times, and I thought, well, that's odd. I wonder if in all those times I've been inside my radio, if I did something to it. So I got the jumper radio out, and I looked at its calibration, and I noticed the same thing. When I'm on position 6, I see 99, and then 5 gives me 59 and 19. And yes, I did a recalibration on this radio as well. So I'm not sure if that's something in OpenTx. Clearly, it's not related to the hardware itself. It feels like there's just something off just a little bit in OpenTx, maybe. I don't know. But what I do know is that while I was doing the calibration, every one of the flight modes is recognized, and the 6-position switch is recognized. So since it's not a control surface, I think I don't have a choice. I'm going to have to live with it. I'd be curious to hear from you guys if you're also seeing 99 on your 6-position switch on your Radiomaster or your jumper radio. I'm very curious about that at this point. We've done our battery voltage calibration. We've done our stick calibration. The last thing we need to do is the battery gauge calibration, because you notice on the top bar, OpenTx shows you a little icon with the battery strength meter, and the way that is calibrated is based on what I'm about to show you. So click on the system button and then click page right twice, and you'll notice right here, battery meter range. I've got mine set to 6.4 to 8.4, and this goes back to what we talked about at the opening of the video. You need to find out what your cutoff voltage is. I set mine for 6.4 because I want a cutoff voltage of 3.2 volts per cell, and this is a 2-cell battery. So I set mine to 6.4, which is 3.2 times 2. My voltage cutoff is 3.2 volts. I have 2-cell battery. That means I want it set for 6.4. The top end of this range, 8.4 volts, is peak voltage when I charge the lithium-ion batteries inside the TX16s. The cutoff happens at 8.4 volts. So at 8.4 volts, the battery gauge will show full, and at 6.4 volts, the battery gauge will show empty. And that's why in the beginning of the video, we spent a little time figuring out what our voltage cutoff was. In my setup, I've got a range of 6.4 to 8.4, which gives me 2 volts top to bottom. And right now, I've used 0.5 of a volt because I'm at 7.9 off of a peak of 8.4. So that gives me about 25% battery consumption, and that's what my gauge should be showing me, is I've used about a quarter of my battery. Alright guys, that's all I've got on the first 3 things you should do to calibrate your OpenTx radio. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share the video. Don't forget to check out my affiliate links and the t-shirt store. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy.